At first you kind of learn to laugh it off because they tell you like, oh, it's just boys being boys.
From the age of just 13, Aaliyah says the sexual comments, the demands to show boys her body were as much a part of the timetable as lessons. Then at 14, in the school corridor, she says she was sexually assaulted by a boy she regarded as a friend.
I thought he was just saying goodbye and like to give me a hug, but he actually just put himself on top of me and kind of like held me down against the wall, and I kind of just froze and all the guys were just laughing. I felt violated completely, but the whole time I was telling myself that it was like this joke and that I just wasn't getting it, and I was trying to convince myself that I wasn't being sexually assaulted.
Aaliyah, when not using her real name, says she didn't report it because the culture at the school suggested it wouldn't be taken seriously.
They're not told they can't. They're told that this is normal behaviour for them and that this is just boys acting like boys.
Was that the sense you got at the school?
Definitely, yeah. I'd have conversation with teachers about, like this much later on, about guys thinking they can make comments about girls' bodies and they wouldn't condemn it. They'd just be like, oh, well, it happens.
The report paints a really shocking picture of school life where sexual harassment and abuse is so common it's considered entirely normal. Sexist language or being sent unwanted explicit pictures is commonplace for girls. And boys trade nudes of their fellow pupils as if it's a game. The report also says that many children don't even bother to report it because they're unconvinced anything will be done about it. And that teachers and schools are completely underestimating the scale of this really serious problem. According to exclusive figures obtained by Channel 4 News from police forces across England and Wales, there have been more than 6,300 reported incidents of sexual harassment and abuse at or near schools since 2018, the equivalent of more than 5 incidents reported to police every day. More than 600 involved rape or attempted rape. And while many involved suspects aged 11 to 17, more than 400 incidents involved suspects under 11, with several as young as 4. The government promised more support for schools and colleges today, but said the fight against such abuse goes well beyond the school gates.
Sexual harassment, let alone non-consensual touching, groping or sexual contact, none of this is okay. Sending unrequested nudes is not okay, and neither is bullying your peers into sending a nude and then sharing it with your mates. We as government, as parents, as educators and as a society must work together to turn the cultural dial.
It was the thousands and thousands of testimonies of abuse in schools posted anonymously on this website which prompted today's Ofsted investigation. The website founder says she welcomes the focus on an issue not everyone is yet willing to face up to.
It is distressing to note that we have received messages from young people reaching out to us to tell us that their heads have actually told them to stop sending in testimonies to the Everyone's Invited website. And this worries us because we wonder why head teachers are choosing to silence survivors and victims.
You should treat each other equally. So you treat the person the way you want to be treated.
At Whitefield School in North London, they're tackling it head on.
Consent is like when you're in a relationship and no matter what the person is always comfortable.
Ofsted says every school and college must do the same and end the tacit acceptance that coping with sexual harassment is just one of the harsher lessons of school life.
Earlier, Jackie Long spoke to the Chief Inspector of Ofsted, Amanda Spielman, about her report and what our figures say about the scale of the problem affecting schools across the country.
Sexual comments, rumours about girls' sexual activity, things like that have been with us for a very long time, but perhaps are being intensified and amplified, for example, by access to pornography and by smartphones and internet technologies and online access of various kinds over the last decade.
6,000 incidents reported to police at or near a school is really quite alarming. 50% of suspects or offenders were 17 or younger.
So that's 1 in 6 schools have had an incident in or near them over the last 3 years. That is indeed worrying information.
So it tells us that there is something going badly wrong. I suppose the question now is, what do we do about it?
It's not something that there is a silver bullet for. Government has a role, schools and colleges have a role, parents have a role, companies running all manner of social media platforms have a role, and of course regulatory and agencies and inspectorates like us have a role.
But I just wonder whether there is something very, very specific to this that Ofsted could do. So, for example, if you speak to a head teacher who knows Ofsted coming in, they're worried about their exam results, they're worried about how the school is seen to be functioning. They've got to be worried about sexual harassment in their schools when you're heading their way.
We don't set performance measures for schools, and we are only a piece of the regulatory system. It is the government that is at the Department of Education is the regulator for schools. We are just the inspectorate, so we cannot set sanctions for schools. We report within our framework, which has this strong emphasis, and we're going to be training and encouraging inspectors to follow up in every case where a school doesn't think it has much of a problem.
The woman who runs Everyone's or created Everyone's Invited told us today she's hearing from young girls and young women who are being told by their teachers, by their heads, I don't want you posting stories on that website. Would you worry about that? I
would worry about that. I don't think it's right. I do understand how hard it is for people to respond to a number of anonymous testimonies. So this systemic approach is really, really important.
Amanda Spielman, thanks very much for talking to us today.
Thank you.